I'm Anne-Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hotflash Inc.
You're all woman to me. All right, Anne-Marie.
Hi, Andrea. We've been yapping for a long time now. I feel like the podcast is over.
Hi, Anne-Marie.
I love talking to you. I love it.
I know, same.
Oh, this treat of just getting into this and meeting people from all over the world who are so smart. I just absolutely love it. Okay, so this is a very big month for you because you are having research published in a medical journal, Menopause, the Journal of the Menopause Society, the North American one. So just tell me about what that is and how it came about.
So you're actually the first podcast that I'm doing as a published menopause researcher, which is very exciting. The journal came out at the end of November, and it's so exciting. So we have 4 abstracts that are published in the journal Menopause. One is on the signs and symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. One is on sleep issues. One is on anxiety and mental health. And then the other one is on doctor visits. What are the experience that women are going through as they're going to their doctors and healthcare providers when they share their symptoms?
Okay. So first of all, how did you get into doing all this research and why?
So I'm obsessed with data. I was one of the, when I think back to when I was a little kid, my mom used to say to me, you ask a lot of questions. And it wasn't in a negative way. It was more, I'm just a very inquisitive person. I'm always asking what, how, when, like where. So I love to know the answers. I love to dig deep into things and not just kind of keep it at the surface. I want to understand how we got here. So several years ago, I was at a party before I started Morphus. I was at a party with my husband. I met an old friend and we kind of were catching up on what we were doing. And she said that she was creating an app for menopause symptoms. And at the time, I'm like, menopause symptoms, like, don't you actually have to have a lot of them? I'm like, you're going to create an entire app. Don't you need a few? So she was like, yeah, there's like 34 to 40 symptoms. Like there's quite a bit. And the way my brain works is I'm just very data driven. And I went home and I created this Google sheet and I'm like, okay. I put down all the symptoms and then I started researching what are those symptoms. And I would look at the medical journals. I would listen to communities. I would listen to our communities. I would ask friends. I would ask family. I would see what I was feeling. And then quickly that number, I got to like over 85. And then I thought, well, there's actually a lot more than I think we realize. And then I thought in 2022, we have this incredible community. I've got a huge TikTok community. We've got an incredible community through our website and our newsletter. I'm like, why don't we just go to our community and ask them what they're feeling? What are their symptoms? And that's when we decided to launch our first survey, which was the Signs and Symptoms Survey. And that's one of the ones that are being, that, like, as I mentioned, is being, that was just recently published. So now we know, according to our research, that there are way more than the 34 recognized symptoms that we see everywhere. There's in fact 103 plus symptoms. And that's what we now know and see in the journal Menopause.
Okay, so I gave a workshop at Google Dubai 2 weeks ago, and I showed your 103 symptoms, and they gasped. There was a when they saw it. It was crazy, and it was just to see them all gathered there. It's quite something.
So first of all, thank you for showing that and sharing information that is current. And the other thing is I got the same reaction. So in September, I showcased 4 posters at the Menopause Society's annual conference that was sold out this year, which was incredible to see. And the healthcare practitioners and the doctors who I was able to share my posters with gasped as well. They were like, whoa, there are that many symptoms. And that's why our work is so important because when we validate women, how they're feeling, because what we know from our doctor's visit survey is that 40% of women are being dismissed or gaslit by their doctors or healthcare providers. And they're sharing their symptoms. 90% of the women are sharing their symptoms with their doctors. But when that large of amount of people are getting, or women are getting dismissed or gaslit, it's because I feel like not enough information or education is around the number of symptoms. So if they come in with something that isn't on those 34 recognized symptoms, then they might dismiss it and go, oh, it could be something else. Now, I feel like that's where this research and why it's so important is that it helps to educate doctors, it helps to educate women what they're feeling, and then they can go in empowered and say, here, this is how I'm feeling, and it's on the list of 103 plus symptoms.
Okay, so Where, where's that 34 Google? Like, where is that? And I hear it every day. I hear it. No, I hear it all the time. Where does that come from?
Okay, so this is so interesting. So I'm writing a book. It's going to be published by Simon and Schuster in 2026 on menopause. So I'm writing the book and I'm writing my chapter. I have a whole chapter on our research. And I talked about the 34 recognized symptoms. And anywhere you search it online, it will come up 34 recognized symptoms, all the major websites and medical websites as well. So I could not find the source of where the 34 came from. It's not in any medical journals, and at least that I had come like that I looked for. So I emailed the Menopause Society and I had asked them, I'm like, do you know where the actual source comes from? And they were like, no, we don't know where the source comes from. So we ended up finding it in like a PDF from like 2013 that it was mentioned. But yeah, I think it just came to be where it was mentioned, and then it probably just took on, and kind of that's where everybody took that information from there, which I know that's something you speak about a lot as a journalist. So you could talk to that better than I can, but apparently
I think it's called an illusory truth, where it's just repeated so many times. And this just shows how information spreads. Like, this is so interesting to me, right? Because someone got it from there, but it wasn't even a whole article about it. It's like one, and often things are traced back and it's just the most insignificant thing, and then it becomes the truth. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me. So anyway, thank you for telling me. That was so satisfying, like so absolutely satisfying. There's a lot of examples of these sorts of things too in medicine, where and actually in everything, where they're just repeated over and over. But we've got to get your 103 symptoms to the top of the Google list. How do we do that?
I don't know. And then now I guess we have to try and get people to share the right information. I mean, I hear all the time from people who will say to me, I attended a workshop or I attended a webinar or something, and they talked about the 34 symptoms, and I mentioned the 103. So I think we just need to get more information out on podcasts like yours and podcasts like mine, and share it. And the more we have it on our website, and I think the more people talk about it, and the fact that now it is in a medical journal, like the journal Menopause, I think it'll hopefully catch on, and then more doctors will read it, and more healthcare providers will read it, and more women will understand it. So hopefully that's how it'll take a life of its own.
What's on there that's weird or that surprised you?
I think in terms of surprising, so from our symptom survey, I think what really surprised me is on average, women are experiencing 31 different symptoms. Now, it surprised me and it didn't, but the fact that that 31 we're experiencing over 30 symptoms on average, that's a lot of symptoms. Mm-hmm. So, and then if we break it down even a little bit further, 90% experience at least 13 symptoms and 10% experience more than 50 symptoms.
Wow. No wonder we're just grabbing at everything all the time to try and feel better.
I think that, I always wonder, and I always think, as women, this is a women's health issue, right? And we know that there isn't a lot of research, or now there's going to be more. I just interviewed someone from the NIH, and we know that there's going to be this budget for menopause research, which is incredible that it's happening. But I feel like there's so much that we just don't know when it comes to women's health and menopause and perimenopause in particular, which is why I love doing this research so much, because for me, validating women, supporting women, and making them feel like they're not crazy. I mean, how many times, Anne-Marie, do you hear from women that, on your social media, speaking to them, and it's like, I feel like so misunderstood, or I feel like I'm going crazy, or I feel like, something took over my body. This isn't me anymore. And even when you were going through it, right? Did you feel like you were alone on an island?
Yeah, someone said that the other day, that they felt so alone. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I thought I was alone because I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids, and I wasn't dating anyone. But then I was thinking, every woman feels alone. That's what they always say, even if they're surrounded by people. I think that's a really important point. And there's barely any studies on perimenopause. Like, one of the things that's really frustrating is that they're very different, right? Menopause and perimenopause. And all of the information about menopause that they have is being extrapolated to apply to perimenopause. But I think once we get some more research, I mean, when it comes to perimenopause and hormone therapy, it's in the hundreds. And there's only like 6,000 or 7,000 studies on perimenopause as it is. So how could that, if they're not the same thing? So we're going to find this out.
And what's interesting too, from our research, from our signs and symptoms survey, we did break it down between perimenopause and menopause. And what we found is the top 5 symptoms of perimenopause are fatigue, brain fog. Sorry, that's the top 5 in general. The top 5 symptoms in general are fatigue, brain fog, sleep issues, memory loss, and anxiety. Women in perimenopause are more likely to experience fatigue, anxiety, lack of patience, headaches or migraines, emotional weepiness, and social anxiety. Where women in menopause are more likely to report sleep issues, hot flashes, night sweats, slower metabolism, changes in body shape, and that's where the weight gain comes in, and inflammation. So we did break it down by the stage that you're in. The other thing that was really interesting from that survey as well is that we found out that about 20% of women don't know what stage they're in, which shows how much work we have to do. So these results that are published are based on 2,239 women. We now have, that survey now has over 5,000 responses.
Amazing. You're doing amazing things. I remember I saw the phases of perimenopause, and it was revelatory. I saw it posted, and I could see that, if you'd gone 60 days without a period, you were in mid to late. And it was so comforting to me because it had gone on for so long. And it's just like, okay, there is an end to it. And I can see that I kind of fall on this grass. It was really, but that's, I think, something that we have to get out there. But anytime I share, Lara Bryden's done work, and Jerry Lynn Pryor, and it's based on research. But anytime I share it, women will always, of course, say that doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm over here and I don't have that, because that's what social media is like. Often when you present something, people are like, well, it doesn't exactly apply to me, so I'm going to reject it.
And everybody goes through it so differently too, right? Like what? Yeah, we all have such different experiences. And I also feel like, I think there's a stat out there, and I haven't done the research to find out where the stat came from. And they say like something like 13 to 15% of women say that they don't have any symptoms at all. And I actually challenge that stat because I feel like, because there were only the 34 recognized, that if they don't fall into that category, then you think you don't have any symptoms, right? Whereas I feel like that we actually, that stat's way lower than what.
Oh yeah. And I remember I was doing a contract in Dubai, and there was a woman there from the Philippines, and I was telling her about Hotflash, and I was saying, oh, I had all these, like I had a fear of flying, and some women have a fear of driving, and she stopped. She didn't think she had anything. And then she had ridden her bike all over Dubai, and she was scared to ride her bike to take it to the track. And she'd also been scared of driving, and she didn't put any of those. And I said, this is not you. It's not just you and she was like, I'm going to go this weekend. I'm going to make myself. But that's like, maybe you just have that. Maybe you just have sudden social anxiety, because that's another thing. Social anxiety. I was at a restaurant in Dubai on the weekend, and I was telling my friend that I went to an event there, and I was supposed to meet someone, and that person was late. And I was so stressed out, I left. And I'm like, I don't even recognize who that person is. Like, I couldn't, there was nowhere to sit, and I was so uncomfortable. And I was like, me sitting here at 54 doesn't even understand that. Like, I remember driving back just being anxious and beside myself, and then feeling worse because I basically stood up the person who was late. But that's it. That's what's going on inside your body. So, you've done such good work.
When I was a newspaper editor, I banned all headlines that said, "New year, new you." We do not need to be any different, in my opinion. Now, renewing ourselves, that's something I can get behind. One way to go about this is MitoPure by Timeline. MitoPure contains the rare postbiotic urothalin A. It works by promoting a process of cellular cleanup that clears out dysfunctional mitochondria. And mitochondria are what power your cells, which are what power you. MitoPure's own testing has shown improvements in energy levels, recovery time, endurance, and more. Timeline is offering 33% off your order of MitoPure while supplies last. Go to timeline.com/hotflash33. That's timeline.com/hotflash33.
Okay. Tell us about doctor's visits, because this is something we've all been living with for a long time.
Okay, so this is such an interesting, we actually just launched a follow-up, a part 2 to this. So I'd love your listeners to go fill it out. It's Healthcare Insights. So it's part 2 to the doctor's visit survey. And the reason why we launched the second one is because when I was at the Menopause Society, a lot of doctors were asking us questions about this. So we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper about the type of doctors that you were visiting and sharing your symptoms with. So I'm excited that will be hopefully, we want to get a lot of responses to that. So hopefully we can get that published next year. So what we found from our doctor's visit survey is that 90% of women talk to their doctors about, or healthcare providers about, their symptoms. 75% of the women had to visit their doctor or healthcare provider many times, anywhere between 2 and 5+ times, before their symptoms were linked to how they were feeling to perimenopause and menopause. So 40% visited their doctor between 2 and 3 times before they got their answers. 18% went 4 to 5 times, and 17% saw their doctors 5 or more times, and in many cases still don't have answers. So it's taking a really long time to get the answers to how you feel. And what are the repercussions of that? Well, so like anxiety, health anxiety, it could influence your work. It could influence your relationships with your partner, your kids, your friends, your parents. So there's so many, and costs, huge cost factor involved, right? So we need to get to the source much quicker than we are currently. So we hope that these numbers are going to flip on their side. And the other thing we wanted to know was, when the topic was the topic brought up, and when it was, who brought it up? So what we found out is that 75% of the women bring up the topic. So they go to see their doctor or healthcare provider, they tell them how they're feeling, and they say to their doctor, could it be perimenopause or menopause? So 75% of the women brought it up to their doctor. Only 10% of the doctors brought it up to their patients as a possibility. 15% had no conversation at all. So the patients didn't bring it up, and nor did the doctor bring it up. So we want to see these numbers flip, because, and hopefully in the next, couple of years, because this is where our healthcare system is failing us, right? And this is where the changes need to happen. Now, this was true, by the way, for both the US and Canada. So we thought, because they're very different, healthcare systems, I wanted to know, because I live in Canada, I wanted to know, does it differ from the US? And we found that there really was no difference between the two.
Okay. Did you get any information about doctors that didn't really know what they were doing?
So in terms of
treatment, did you get it? Did you dive into that at all?
Oh, we did. So we asked the doctors, so those that were treating their patients, what were they recommend? Yeah. What were they recommending? So we found out the number one thing that doctors are recommending are antidepressants.
Okay.
Number 2 are hormones, and number 3 are supplements. Now, the antidepressants and the hormones were they were close to each other, but antidepressants were still number 1. And a lot of the feedback that we got was that has to change, where they want hormones to see that a little bit higher. I was actually really happy to see that supplements were recommended, because a lot of people are now taking supplements and taking charge of their health because of what's happening with our food, et cetera, and our bodies aren't absorbing things as well. So as someone who has a supplement company, I was like, oh, that's really cool to hear that healthcare providers and doctors are actually recommending it. And my guess would be things like fish oil and magnesium and vitamin D and vitamin K. These are things that, that we know that are very helpful for women in this phase of life. So that made me happy to see that.
Okay, so you talked about anxiety and sleep. I feel like these go together, but can you just break down what happened in each?
Okay, so this is really interesting. And I love that you're actually saying kind of to break it down in each, because they actually go hand in hand, like you're saying. So once we found out, so we know that that sleep is the 3rd most common symptom of perimenopause. The menopause, as I mentioned, it's in the top 5, right? So what we found out is that I wanted to know, because sleep is the number 3 most sleep issues are the number 3 most common symptom. Why aren't we sleeping in this phase of life? So the way we asked the questions at the time is, are you waking up between 2 and 4 a.m.? Like, what are things that are preventing you from getting that good night's sleep? So we found out that the number one issue by far, or the number one reason by far, is that women are waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. Now, as a nutritionist, my first go-to is, it must be cortisol rising at the wrong time. But it could be a lot of different reasons. It could be blood sugar, it could be digestion, it could be different things. So I couldn't definitively say, it's because of stress. The number 2 most common reason is waking up because you're going to the bathroom several times a night. I've had women tell me they go like 2, 3, 4 times a night, maybe every hour on the hour. So if you're going more than once a night, that is a lot. And then the number 3 most common reason is night sweats. So top 3. Now, other things as well, as like your room is too hot or your room is too cold, or maybe there's too much light in your room. your bed isn't comfortable, your pillow, pain. There are a lot of other reasons as well, but those were the top three.
I always get so frustrated when people talk about that though, because it's like, okay, fine, but really, like you're in your 40s. Like I think you might be able to figure it out if your room is too light or but maybe not.
Well, then and it's really interesting because I think from a light, just to that point in particular, like I have a friend who doesn't use blackout blinds, and there's a lot of light, especially even ambient
Get it?
light.
I do get that.
Right. So there's a lot of ambient light that comes in. So now they're connecting it to memory issues, but also it's connected to insulin. So like we really want to make sure that our room is dark just to get that better night's sleep, but also from a health perspective, it's really important. So once we did the sleep issue survey, and I wanted to know also like mental health and anxiety. So we did another survey that was also just published. And what we found out is that 66% of us are more stressed now than we were before we got into this stage of life, and we're less able to cope with it. That's no surprise. A lot of us, as you were just mentioning, my business partner, Randy, can't drive on highways anymore. She doesn't like to anymore.
Aww.
So things constantly, that anxiety, those feelings of like, anxiousness are real. Stress and anxiousness are real. So what I wanted to find out was, okay, so I tied it into sleep as well. And I asked the question of like, if you're not sleeping well, what are the reasons, if you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., what are the reasons you're waking up? And that confirmed 67% of the people said it's because of stress or stress related feelings. So that was able to confirm the fact that in my sleep issues survey is that the number one reason we are waking up in this phase of life is in fact due to stress. So what are things that we can do to help give us that better night's sleep or set us up for sleep success is helping to bring down our stress levels. And maybe that's something like meditation before bed. Maybe that's deep breathing, listening to calming music. Sound baths are beautiful. Like you can listen to that on YouTube or TikTok. Like that's that beautiful music that you hear frequency and sound. And it's like, it's just beautiful. Journaling, gratitude journaling, maybe taking a bath with some essential oils, anything that's going to kind of help you just breathe and get that better night's sleep will do you a lot of good.
I got a shout out for stretching or yin yoga or foam rolling, because those are, for me,
Amazing.
there's just, I feel like there's a release in your body, but I also feel that there's like, I feel like your nervous system gets the message that you're just taking a breather in a moment to take care of yourself. I sleep so well, even 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also supplements, like I'm obviously love supplements like magnesium is really great for helping you get that better night's sleep. Magnesium bisglycinate in particular, because it's attached to the amino acid glycine that helps you to relax. We've got our Sleep Buzz product that has L-theanine and lactium and magnesium and sustained release melatonin that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep and then also get more deep sleep. So here's the thing that's really important. As we get older, we get less deep sleep. We need to get that deep sleep because what that does is it helps our body to repair from that day, but also it helps our brain repair because through our glymphatic system. So anything that's going to help us get that better night's sleep is really important. So whatever works for you, the key is to get that better night's sleep and to get more deep sleep.
Did you know I also have a Substack? That's just a fancy way of saying I have a newsletter. But listen, it's not like every other newsletter. I am the only journalist in the world who's made menopause my beat. And each week I share research, news, products, tips, and tricks from the world of menopause and midlife. Sometimes I even write an essay. Hotflash Inc. on Substack is where I pull together everything that's here and in the menosphere, and I break it down just for you so that we can try and make sense of it all and figure out what to do together in real time. Join more than 5,000 women practitioners, CEOs, and more, and become a subscriber today. You can get my podcast as well as special video and audio drops you can't get anywhere else. Sign up today at hotflashinc.substack.
I'm curious, are you a mouth taper?
Oh, it's so funny. Someone else just asked me that recently on a podcast. So I've tried mouth taping, and I do think it's great because it helps to increase nitric oxide. I don't do it all the time because I find it a little bit strange for me. Like I don't love to have my mouth taped, but I do know that there's incredible benefits to it. And I was sharing too, because I had tried a brand that makes mouth tape. I think it was called Somnifix. I tried their brand, but I ended up going to the pharmacy and I got like the tape, the kind of the tape you can put
Yep.
on your gauze. And I tried that, and that could work as well. But yeah, I have tried it. I just don't do it consistently.
Did you notice a difference in your sleep? Because you
Not
track all this
really.
stuff too. You didn't.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't tracked it since I've been wearing my ring tracker. So it's been a while since I've done it. But and then also when I tried it, it ends up being off by the morning. So somehow I take it off in the middle of the night.
Oh, you know what's funny is my friend, her three boys play hockey, and they all tape their mouth, like they play competitive, I don't know, whatever it is in Canada level. And she just said that every morning they'll just compare where their tape was. And I always laugh because one day his son had it wrapped around his finger, and I've seen it like on my forehead or but
That's
she was
hilarious.
telling me that Matthew Walker, he's the big sleep writer. And he was saying now in his book that that helps you not get up to sleep pee so much in the night. So I've
So
got to track that back.
it probably increases vasopressin, which is the antidiuretic hormone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And I started taping again when she said that because I have always got up 2 or 3 times a night to go to the bathroom. It's not really anything different from when I was younger because I drink a bunch of water. But I find that is a nice side effect. So that I just can't believe how quickly you had that answer. I got to think of something else I've been wondering. The great
I've tried
Andrea just
everything.
answered me. Yeah. Okay. So workplace, I'm very curious about. I have been in a workplace for the last 9 months for the first time in a long time because I was a freelancer and I was like, sheesh, this is a minefield. Just today, I thought I sent an email yesterday. And it turns out that I sent it so quickly and then deleted the chain that it never left. Like it never went. So it was a draft in my trash. And I'm pretty confident, but for a few seconds there, I felt crazy. Like I felt super crazy. And my boss was sort of looking at me like I was crazy and I couldn't find it. And I got really like turned around and I was thinking, this is one of the things that is really hard that we don't think about when we talk about menopause in the workplace. So what did you turn up?
Yes. So what we know is that obviously, a lot of the same symptoms in the top 10 are common for reasons why women are having a difficult time at work performing. But one of the things that came up, which was great, was that less tolerance for BS. So I thought that was really great. I was like, oh, yes, it's exactly, which is true, right? A lot of us have less tolerance for it. But what's interesting about women in the workplace is that I've spoken to a lot of women who have left because of their symptoms or have passed up promotions because of their symptoms. But a lot of things are now being done to help women in the workplace. So what we're seeing is companies are starting to implement certain programs or policies that are helping women in the workplace so that either maybe they could work from home or work a little bit less or whatever it is that the companies are implementing. Not enough yet. So it's kind of just starting to get there. One company in particular, which is Sun Life, they have the woman who heads up, her name is Helena. It's Sun Life Canada. She's been a huge champion for women in the workplace. And they put on a huge event through the Globe and Mail a couple of weeks ago. And they're really trying to get things to be changed in the workplace and create awareness for women because as we're coming into our own, we're more empowered. We have so much life experience behind us. But yet, if you're not sleeping well, or you're experiencing hot flashes at the office, or a friend of mine told me she was in a boardroom with a bunch of men, she was at the CEO level, and she passed out because she was anemic. She was in perimenopause, passed out. The people around her didn't know what to do. She didn't know, like it was just an awkward situation. And she said nobody really talked about it afterwards. But if there's communication and education and it becomes less of a stigma in the workplace, then we have the vocabulary to talk about it so that it's not so embarrassing or not so stigmatized. So that's how I think things can change. But more needs to happen. More companies like Sun Life need to come on board to help women and support women by educating the companies who take on their insurance, right? So just more, it's changing, it's coming, which I'm happy to see.
One of the things about like collecting data is that there's a lot of people collecting data to get their name out there, right? And so we see a lot of data about menopause in the workplace because I think it might be an easier thing to survey in a way. And I just wondered when you see those studies, what should people be looking out for? And the reason I bring this up is a British woman named Rachel Lancaster traced down this figure that was in all the British newspapers that 900,000 women are going to leave the workforce. And when she traced it back, it was a bit like the Google 34, where it was like a very, very small survey that was done by Bupa, that was extrapolated by probably some editor and blown out of purpose. It's not anywhere near 900,000 when you break down the math about it.
Wow.
Menopause in the workplace just seems to be that one survey that always gets headlines, like, and I wonder just like when we're seeing those headlines, because I'm so rambling here, Andrea, but I always wonder, we don't really know, are women leaving because of their symptoms? Are they leaving because they've had enough are they leaving because they're in a career they don't like and they've realized that's part of sort of the menopause transition that there was a lot of questions.
And you know what? I'm not going to say that I'm an expert here, and only because we have two surveys when it comes to the workplace. One is workplace employed, so you're still employed, and one is that you're unemployed, meaning you're either a stay-at-home mom or you left the workplace. And the reason why I can't talk about this confidently yet is because I haven't had the data analyzed.
Okay.
So I like to wait. So you know me, Anne-Marie. I like to speak when I have the information at my fingertips, and I like to wait until we have over 1,000 responses of any survey that we do. So there are a lot of surveys out there, and I don't know. I mean, I know that you can have a survey published at 200 responses, but the way I work and the way I like to work with my community is I like to wait until I have 1,000. So we're not there yet. So once I do, I will come back and I will share that information with you from our community as to what they're experiencing.
Okay. So lots of people in the survey is always a good start because you can't really draw much. And also, a wide audience, like you have people across platforms that you're talking to, and you have lots of different ways of collecting information.
All over the world. Women all over the world answer our surveys.
It's amazing. Okay. So how do people, what's going on now with your surveys? How do people get involved?
So they're all on our website, which is wearemorphous.com. So it's right at the top under research. And we have 11 of them right now. We have one on phantom smells, which is one of my favorite surveys because there is so little research being done on phantom smells. So phantom smells are when you smell things that other people don't. And the reason why I'm passionate about it is because it was one of my first symptoms. I had no idea it was a perimenopause symptom. And neither did my doctor, neither did my ENT. I went for several, I think at least 2 MRIs to find out I was smelling smoke and gasoline and burnt toast, and nobody could figure out why. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? But all my results came back okay, everything is fine. I got that clean bill of health, and I still never had answers until in the most recently when I started doing the research and going, wait a minute, this is a symptom of perimenopause and menopause. Looking back, I started having phantom smells at the age of 36. So I know I started peri in my mid 30s, and I didn't go into menopause until I was 50. So I was in perimenopause for 14 years, 11 of which I had no idea. So talking about being on an island, feeling alone, I would ask my friends, I would ask my doctor, I would ask people around me, are you feeling this, what I'm feeling? And they'd be like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, this must be me. This just has to be me because nobody else was experiencing the raging, the mood swings, the weight gain, the weight loss, the ups and the downs, the sleep issues. I can go on and on. The phantom smells, which I didn't even know to ask at the time. But so this is why, I wanted to do a phantom smell survey. So what we found out, and people are always like, what? It's kind of like phantom smells and itchy ears are one of those things that people are like, what? I didn't know that's a perimenopause or menopause symptom. So what we know is from a phantom smell is that the top 3 most common are smoke by far. Then we've got BO and mildew, or mildew and BO. It's those are the top 3. So a lot of women will say they smell BO, but I guess it's not really there. And then they're like, yep, BO and then mildew. But then there's other phantom smells like cat pee and poop and, gasoline, like I mentioned, and sulfur and rotten meat. And so the list goes on, but not all of them are all negative. Electric wires, that's a big one. Electricity, burnt wires is a big one too, or cheap plastic smells like flip-flops. So that's another one that a lot of people smell. But then there are some good ones like chocolate chip cookies or chrysanthemums and chicken soup. And I'm like, why couldn't I have those? That would have been a really good phantom smell to have.
Do you have any idea what's causing that other than just general changes in the brain?
It has to do with hormones.
Yeah. Just
the
the way it's-
changing hormones. So like I'm looking here, sewage, burning plastic, oily hair is another really common phantom smell. So, and then you have blueberry muffins is one, pizza, popcorn. I'm like, yeah, I would have liked the better ones. So
I just
we have a
burning. I just
phantom
smelled
smell.
burning, like almost like toast. Because I remember thinking all the time, like, okay, I'm having a seizure. I'm having a seizure. But that resonated so much with me when you said you would always ask people, because I would always be asking people too, like, do you ever have tingling in your hands and tingling? And
Extremities.
the thing is, really, people look alarmed, and then you feel even more lonely, right? Because you're just trying to find some common ground, and because the minute someone says, "Oh yeah, I had that," it's this or whatever, you feel so much better. But you're so scared that something is like, you're just walking around thinking like, am I dying and I just don't know it yet?
The health anxiety is real. Now, of course, and I know you feel this too, is always go to your doctor, get things checked out. You always want to get that clean bill of health because you want to make sure if you need to get tests done, like do what you need to do. But then if the answers come back and be like, we don't know what's wrong with you, which is the case for many of us, then it can be like, okay, it's chalked up. You can chalk it up possibly to a perimenopause or menopause a symptom. So I just feel like, yes, I felt like I was very alone. I felt like, to your point, having somebody be like, oh, yeah, no, I feel that too, kind of makes you feel that there isn't something wrong with you. Right. And that's why I'm a strong believer in community. And I know you are too, is having that community that you can teach and learn from. You all learn from each other so that you don't feel like you're so alone.
Oh, well, I just can't thank you enough for talking about this. And go to We Are Morphus to participate in all 11 of these surveys, especially if they're not surgeries, you're not going to have any surgery, especially if you've had phantom smells, because I want to see that. I want to see all about that.
Yeah, that's one that I'm looking to publish next year. So we're already over 1,000 responses on that one. So I'm hoping to have that published next year. And yeah, so we have 11 in total. They literally take under a minute each to do. Like they're super fast, but your help will help us go a long way so that we can continue to publish research around perimenopause and menopause.
Well, you guys are flying. I'm really proud of you. And I'm happy I know you. Thank you.
Thank you. Same, right back at you.
And We Are Morphus has really, really good supplements. I know Andrea is like so obsessive about detail in a good way and quality. And I just got an order of your Peak Nagino. And I was very excited to get it. And it's a really cute package and made all the way here. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm crazy about quality and third-party testing and ingredients that have research behind it. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Hotflash Inc. was created and is hosted by Anne-Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Anne-Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hotflash Inc. Media.